These last few years have made us question everything. Our relationships, our jobs, what constitutes an office, and who we are. In a world filled with chaos, confusion, and uncertainty, it's time for some clarity. It's time to start understanding one another. It's time to start understanding ourselves. We envision a world where everyone knows their why. But even more, we envision a world where everyone knows their WHY.os. Their why, their how, and their what. The operating system that drives you, that lets the world know where you stand, what your unique gift is, and most importantly, who you are. WHY.os. Are you ready?
Hello and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is, we're welcoming you to Why Not Wednesday. Really excited today to invite you to learn a little bit more about my guest, Stu Heinecke, who is a best-selling business author. If you've seen my post this week about him, he's a Hall of Fame nominated marketer, a Wall Street Journal cartoonist. His first book was How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, and it was named one of the top 64 sales books of all time. If you're in sales, if you're in business, that's an invaluable book. His latest book is really one we'll spend some time talking about, How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed, which lays out a complete model for explosive business growth based on the strategies, attributes, and tools that weeds use to grow, expand, and dominate and defend their turf. That's all stuff we all want to know as business owners, right? So he's a twice nominated Hall of Fame marketer, a NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center author in residence. He was named the father of contact marketing by the American Marketing Association. And his mission, which I love, is to provide unfair advantages to help enterprise, small business, startup sales teams get more C-level meetings with top accounts faster and more efficiently. Man, I am so glad to have Stu Heinecke with us today. How are you doing, Stu?
Great to join you, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Man, it's been so cool to get to know you over the past few months. You know, I don't remember how we got connected. I think someone introduced us, but every time I talk to you, I learn something new. And as I was reading your introduction, I realized what a great value you're bringing to people. So thank you for what you do, Stu.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think one of the really cool things is you and I are collaborators. So
Yes.
I'm really excited about that.
You know, that's great that you brought that up. You know, when we live in a world where, you know, we want to work with people that want to make the world a better place. And we do that by communicating what it is that we do best, right? And so we'll start with that. You know, you bring up a great point. Stu's why, and I posted about this, Stu's why is to find a better way and share it with others. And as I talked about that, what a better illustration of that than the fact that you found a better way for people to grow their businesses. And you said, hey, let's use the metaphor of the weed. And then you're sharing it with the world. You wrote about it. It's not, you don't have a limited mentality or a scarcity mindset. You're like, hey, I learned this. Now I'm going to share it with everybody else. How does the why of better way fit you, Stu?
Well, I mean, I think all of that makes sense. When I took, I guess it's not a test, but the
discovery.
The discovery, yeah. And then the results came back. I thought, that's pretty good, you know, because I've always been thinking, well, I know what I'm trying to create unfair advantages for my clients. So I suppose I have a little bit different nomenclature for it, but it's the same thing. If I'm giving you an unfair advantage, I'm giving you a better way to do something. Not only that, it's a way that really kind of squashes your competition because you're doing it better. You have you have advantages that they can't match. But all of this is about finding better ways to do things.
Right.
And when you see, let's say because you mentioned weeds, people must be thinking, are they talking about this kind of weed? I don't know. No, we're not talking about that kind of weed. We're talking about the dandelions and the other weeds that show up in our lawns and on the sides of roadways. And in the middle of freeways, growing out of cracks in the sidewalks, all of these really very resilient plants that are almost magical. I mean, we're kind of irritated by them because they're so effective. But
Right.
if you think about it, look at what they're doing. They're pulling off the most amazing things. And it turns out we can learn from them and use, I mean, they have a model and we can use it in our businesses. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I talked about that in the post, because one of the things I said is, nobody likes weeds. They grow everywhere, they spread easily, they're hard to kill, and they're relentlessly adaptable. So they're almost impossible to get rid of.
Yeah.
But now if you take that and apply it to your business? What if your business was like a weed? What if it grew everywhere? What if it spread easily? What if it was hard to kill and was relentlessly adaptable and almost impossible to get rid of? Now that we're sitting on the other side of it and we're like, hey, I want my business to be like a weed, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're always going through disruptions all the time. I mean, we just came out of the pandemic, I guess. I mean, people are still walking around with masks on where I am, but we just come out of a pandemic. We might have just come out of a recession. Perhaps we're heading into one. Well, it's inevitable we'll be heading into another one and another one and another one. It's breathing in and out for the economy. We're always going through these disruptions. And if you look at what weeds do, think about the nature of weeds. They always deal with what is. I mean, their emotions, they don't have emotions. We do. They get in our way. They don't have emotions. They're just very matter of fact. This is what I have to deal with. If we were just cut down, we go right back to work rebuilding. There's no emotion about it. There's no, I don't know. They're not. Let's say they're not discouraged by it at all. They don't feel anything about it. They just keep going, and so then they never do anything without an unfair advantage. They never do anything alone. They're natural collaborators, and they always focus on what makes them win. But one of the most amazing things is, Dan, that they thrive best in disruption, or I should say in disrupted ground. So
Right.
as we're going through all this disruption in our businesses and in our lives, it seems to me that I can see it, that the weed strategy, the weed model for growth actually is the perfect model for thriving during those tough times.
And you've got to have partners, right? You've got to collaborate, and they do such a great job of that. It's funny you're saying that because I'm dealing with weeds right now in my yard. I have a beautiful lawn that we had our sprinklers go out for a little bit, and when the sprinklers go out, the grass stops growing. Guess what? The weeds thrive, and the weeds really took over some parts of my yard. The disruption was the sprinklers weren't working.
Yeah.
Guess what? We'll take advantage of that and grow. So why not do that? And I think the businesses that thrive during the pandemic, as you're talking about, is those that were able to make a pivot and do something different. But that one thing that never stopped was that collaboration. And I love Bruce. He's a fellow Better Way guy, by the way, Stu. He says unfair advantage equals competitive edge equals a better way. So that definitely matches up with your why of Better Way. Let's talk about your how of challenge, challenging the status quo, doing things differently. I talked about it in my post. I talked about the fact, well, what's different and out of the box, more different and out of the box than saying, hey, let's take something that nobody likes and let's turn it into a positive. Let's look at the positive aspects of weeds. And then not only that, you also took that and created a roadmap for how to take those advantages and compare them to how weeds grow. I love those sections in the book where you talk about the different weeds at the beginning of the chapters and how the strategies that they use, and then you turn that into a business. Where did that come from? I mean, that's a very creative, that's very challenge of you, just take something completely out of the box and say, hey, let's do it. What made you think, hey, I'm going to use weeds and I'm going to build a business model around it?
Well, I mean, there are lots of weeds. And so I knew what I needed to write about. And there are always weeds that follow those strategies. One of the most amazing ones, because I wasn't expecting to talk about these, and I won't talk too long about them, but if you look at what weeds are up to, my God, they're just incredible. They're so perfected in the way that they adapt and just gain ground. And so one of those is a weed known as water hemp. And this is a plant that it's taking over farmland across North America right now. It's just insidious stuff, although it's also amazing. And so if we think about, let's say, dandelions produce 15,000 seeds per plant over a 5 to 10 year lifespan. That's a lot of seeds. We know they get all over the place. Once they start doing that, you're not going to get rid of them. So, but that's 15,000 seeds. Water hemp lives, they're annuals. So the entire population lives and dies every year. And so it's very, very quick evolution as a result. And then they also produce up to 4.8 million seeds per plant. So think about that. I mean, you will never get rid of this plant. But the other thing about that is that there are so many iterations of their seeds and of their DNA instructions within those seeds that there are always useful mutations. And that's how it evolves around challenges. So Roundup, I'm sorry, it's not Roundup, but water hemp has developed immunity to Roundup, and it took just 4 years to do it. And I think we all know how toxic that stuff is.
Right.
But it worked around it within 4 years. That's incredible. So there are all these you're right, all these weeds have got really interesting little lessons to offer us about putting down roots further than everyone else,
and spreading.
Yeah.
Right. That when you talk about the wheat, the number of seeds per plant, that's incredible. How do you stop that?
Yeah, you'll never get rid of them.
And if you're a collaborator and you're working with lots of people, and lots of people are talking about your business, and lots of people are connecting you to other, then that's how you become like a weed. You spread like wildfire. You spread like a weed.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we all know what it means to grow like a weed. So
yeah. Everybody understands that. There's a lot of genius behind that, Stu, and I really appreciate that you brought that to the forefront. Let's talk. I want to make sure we have time to talk about the book, How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed. And we've talked a little bit about it, but that led to the Total Weed Awards, which is really, really cool. You had the first Total Weed Awards here recently, and you had 4 winners. And when I look at the companies that won, this 3 of the award winners, everybody's going to know. I think everybody knows Clear, the airport security company. We've all been through that, or if we haven't been through it, we wish we had been through it, right? How they use weed strategy, Calendly. And that's a lot of our coaches, a lot of people in our audience use Calendly to book their appointments. Dandelion Energy, you're going to have to tell us a little bit about it. And then your number 4 was Richard Branson. So tell us about each one. Let's tell us real quick what category Clear won in, and tell us a little bit about why you chose them as the winners.
Well, so Clear, we were focused on unfair advantages, and all weeds, they have unfair advantages. That's a big part of how they spread and conquer territory. So if you've ever been to the airport in the US and you're in one of those long security lines, you have a few choices. You could just get in the regular TSA line, and you might wait. I don't know. You could wait up to an hour and a half, perhaps. And these can be very, very long waits, and you're in long lines. Or you can take a little bit of time, a little bit of forethought, and go through the process to become TSA pre-checked. So you go through a shorter line, but then there's always these clear lines that are empty. And they're inviting you to come up and join Clear. There's a fee, but they'll take a very quick biometric image of your eyes and your fingerprints, and off you go to the front of that whole line. So here's the unfair advantage. There's 2 of them. One is, while you're standing and they are there during your moment of pain. And so while you're standing in that long line, it's just dangling right in front of you. You could just get out of line, go over to Clear, join, and get right to the front of the line and do away with all of it. But the other is, who would have ever known that a private company could squeeze their queues into these crowded airport lobbies? But they figured out a way to do it, and they got to do it. Now, if someone else wanted to compete against that, there's no room.
Right.
It's already booked. So
they took the space, and they're there.
Yeah, really incredible unfair advantages. Now, these are not really unfair. I mean, there's nothing illegal about it. It's very clever and creative what they did. But by unfair advantage, I don't mean unfair, and I don't mean illegal or anything or unethical. All I'm saying is, I want the competitors who are facing those advantages to be saying, I want them to be saying, that's unfair. How are we going to do that? How are we going to compete with this? So
absolutely.
In that sense, beautiful unfair advantages.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because we like to talk about knowing a person's WHY.os. Knowing a person's why operating system is an unfair advantage. If you know
Yeah.
somebody's why operate, if I know that Stu is looking for a better way, he's looking to challenge the status quo, and he's looking to build trust, guess what I'm going to talk to Stu about? I'm going to talk about how working with me is going to help him find a better way, how it's going to help him be different than everybody else, and how it's going to help him build trust. Is that unethical? No, I'm just using what I know so that when I connect with Stu, we connect better, because those are the words he's looking for. He's going to connect with me if I talk about things that are better. He's going to connect with me if I talk about things that are different and out of the box. He's going to connect with me when I talk about building trust. So why not know that about everyone you work with? If you're in sales, if you're in marketing, you want to connect with people using the language they want to hear. And so that's our unfair advantage. I love the way that you frame that. It's not unfair in that it's illegal or unethical. It's just an advantage that you have. Why not use it, right?
Yeah, it's just a totally clever, audacious, competitive advantage that no one can match. Those are the best. Well, those are the best kind, and I would say one of the best kinds of unfair advantages are really what you just described. It's an unfair advantage that you can that you can confer on your clients. Like, what a great form of it. There are a lot of forms, but that's certainly one of them. And Clear does that. They give you a great unfair advantage when you get to the airport. Just go through that empty line.
And I just learned something. By the way, Stu. You can actually go right then and there, sign up, and get through the line. So if next time I'm stuck, Clear might just get my money thanks to you.
Yeah.
So they'll make sure we're getting royalties for you on that. Tell me about Calendly. What category did Calendly win?
Well, so Calendly, the thing that we were recognizing is that really weed-like spread, because, well, I mean, you see how weeds spread. They're just, it's geometric. They're seeds. If it's dandelion seeds or that kind of seed that flies, they can spread for hundreds of miles. So that certainly is what facilitates their spread. But with Calendly, we were really admiring the fact that every time you use Calendly, we've all been through it. Either you know someone or you're using it yourself. But if anytime you get an invite, you're also invited to try it for free. And I think that's incredibly clever. They're reaching exactly the people who would use a calendar app, and they're saying, come on in and try it out for free. So it's just sort of a perfect closed loop. That is how they grew their business. And I believe, I'm trying to remember. It's been a little while now since we're focused on the next ones, but I think they have something like 11 million subscribers.
Well, I can tell you, Stu, I deal with people online all the time, and I can't tell you how many of them have Calendly. A very high percentage. I use HubSpot because that's the platform our company's on, but Calendly makes it so easy, and I've used it before. It makes it so easy to join, so easy to share with everyone, and it's almost becoming, they're probably in danger of losing their name. Why don't you Calendly me that, right? The way Xerox did, and other because it becomes such an easy way to book an appointment with someone, and you can create all kinds of formats. So they've got some great advantages. So you recognize them for their ability to spread. Love it.
Spread like a weed.
Spread like a weed.
Yeah.
All right. The next one, I know why you chose them, because they have the right name. How do you not choose a company called Dandelion Energy for the total weed award, right? So tell me about Dandelion. What category did they win?
I was going to say it surely did catch our attention because of the name as well. But well, here's the thing: weeds have a mindset. Now, again, it's not. I mentioned it before. It's not a bunch of guys sitting around smoking doobs. That's not the mindset we're talking about. We're talking about this resilient, aggressive, urgent, perseverant mindset. And also just that they're natural collaborators, but they are fierce. They don't give up. They just keep going, and so they're relentless. And so one of the things that we noticed about the Dandelion Energy story is that they're a startup. They started up in I think it's called the Google Moonworks. Or Moon Factor. I think it's Moonworks. So it's an incubator within Google of different various startup ideas. And so they started there, and their premise was this: look, we've got all of these condenser-based heating and cooling, what do we call it, just apparatus apparatus around, in our houses. These
Infrastructure.
devices, yeah, but these devices that are rather inefficient because they use this condenser technology to either produce heat or cooler air. And they were saying, why don't we take advantage of the naturally regulated temperatures? Just geothermal energy is really what I'm talking about, but it's just naturally regulated temperatures down just a little bit down below the surface. And so they were saying, let's link geothermal energy to these heat pumps, and we'll end up with a much more efficient heat pump. Really great idea. But the problem was that the only technology for producing, or let's say digging down and installing the tubes that or loops or pipes that would go down into the ground were all industrial based. And so to install that at a house level would cost like $80,000. Certainly that's not going to work. But they persevered. This their weed mindset that helped them just push and push and push to find a solution. And finally they did. They found a Swedish company that had already solved this same thing. They have this very cost-effective way of putting these loops down into the ground, which is exactly what they needed. And that brought the cost down to one that's actually affordable for homeowners. So they're spreading because of that.
I like that. So that was the relentlessness, weed relentlessness, right?
Yeah.
And then Richard Branson. I mean, nobody's ever heard of this guy. How does he get this award, right? How do you choose Richard Branson, and what category did he get?
Well, he's hard to ignore. I'm a big fan. I think most of us are a big fan. The thing is, I read his biography recently, and I was just I knew somewhat of what his story was, but when you read his biography, it's just he's so audacious. And when he starts when he's introducing a new venture in a market, he does it with these events that just cause everybody to become aware immediately. So he's a master at that. And the thing is, he just doesn't give up. Now, when this happened, Virgin Orbit had just ceased operation. So that was the operation where they were launching rockets off of a pylon on a 747. And so that one ceased operations. And we were just thinking, look, we know that, I mean, one of the things that weeds really do well is they bounce back. They come roaring back. If you go out and you cut your lawn and you cut down all these weeds, they're going to come right back. If you cut them down, they'll come right back. They don't give up. They don't stop running their process. And so Richard Branson was the one that reminded us the most of them. There are a lot of, actually on all of these categories, there are a lot of possibilities, but I felt, because I'm the one who chose these, that Richard was a great example, because I knew he'd just come roaring back. And sure enough, Virgin Galactic is another of his space ventures that they're now they're back in the news, and they're picking up on their launch, and pretty soon we'll be able to go and fly that spaceship and then come back, and it'll be an amazing experience. I just know that Richard will always come back, and roaring back in ways that are just so audacious. So he certainly captures the spirit of being a weed.
I love that. So he's so the relentlessness was dandelion energy. This is more about coming back from you can't kill him, right?
Yeah. It's just exactly like a weed. He's a total weed.
Hey, I'm gonna give you a question from Bruce Kirk, and this is great. Bruce is a clarifier, so he likes to get clarity. He wants to know how a weed strategy differs from a blue ocean strategy. I have some thoughts. I don't know if you've read Blue Ocean. All of us have. What I think I know the answer, but I want you to answer. We got the author here.
Yeah, well, Bruce, the author of one of them.
That's right.
Yeah. Bruce, thank you for the question. And well, look, the essence of blue ocean strategy is you're either in blue or red water. If you're in red water, what you're in is a crowded, well, I would call it a crowded channel. We're going to mix metaphors here a little bit, but a crowded marketplace where there's blood in the water. And what the authors are saying essentially is you want to find clear areas of blue water where there aren't competitors already. It's sort of like what Christopher Lochhead talks about with with a with a category of one. So you want to be out in areas where you're free of competition. That's great, and that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to be a category of one.
Right.
But here's the thing that I think one of the big differences is that both of these are drawing experiences and models from nature.
Right.
But I don't know how water relates to growth, really. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the big unfair advantages that weeds have is that as a model anyway, as our progenitor of this model, is that we know what it means to grow like a weed, and we have lots of examples of how they're doing it, how they're pulling it off, because we keep trying to get rid of them. And their miracle is, maybe we don't experience it as a miracle, but they keep coming back. And if you watch what they're doing, you can see exactly what the tools that they use and the attributes and the strategies that they use to do that. So we have a much more accessible model, and I think one that actually makes sense because we don't associate ocean with growth per se. Right. Or water with growth. So I like their metaphor, but I really like the weeds metaphor much better. It's just a much more thorough model, really. Of you can see how they do it. You can see that they use unfair advantages and collective scale, and they leverage that. I should say they've got this fierce mindset and unfair advantages, and they leverage that against collective scale, and they do it according to a process that's millions of years old, but it changes on a dime when it needs to. So all of that makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot more sense. I would say it's a much more complete model, because you can see exactly what you need to do.
Well, I think you answered the question with growth. It's about growth.
Yeah.
Your book's about growth. Blue Ocean Strategy is more about moving to a place or creating something, but what's the strategy for growth, right? And I think you can use both. I think they're complementary to each other. But I too agree with you. You've got to read both of them. So good on you, Bruce, because he's obviously a well-read guy. Hey, we're running out of time. I want to make sure we get to two questions. One question is, look, your first book, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. I love the story of your Wall Street Journal cartoonist. So that is an unfair advantage that not everybody who's trying to get a meeting with people has, but you did something really fun. You used to send cartoons that you published in Wall Street Journal to people, and you'd make big cardboard. So tell us about that story real quick.
Oh, well, I discovered a long time ago that if I send a cartoon to someone and it's about them, it was always personalized, then that became a huge unfair advantage. That launched my business. My first campaign, I sent it to 24 people. It launched my business. It was worth millions of dollars. It gave me 100% penetration in the magazine publishing industry from a single campaign that cost me about $100. And that was based on using cartoons and personalization to do it. And oh my God, there's a whole other story about contact marketing, about how to get in touch with people, and the really, it's not just about cartoons. There are really clever things that people have been doing to break through and get meetings that can change the scale of everything. And the response rates and the ROI that come out of these campaigns are higher than any other form of marketing that I know of.
Love that. No, that was such a good story. I'm glad you shared it. Let's ask before we get off the air, I want to make sure we ask the question. Tell us your biggest why not moments, Stu. We talked a little bit about this, and you said, "Hey, you got something good for me." So I can't wait to hear this story.
I hope so. Well, my biggest why not is if someone says something is impossible, that's your invitation to go do it. Mm-hmm. So I've done a lot of those things. One of those was I spotted a woman in a magazine, and I had this fantasy, this high school fantasy. I was going to meet one of those beautiful blonde Scandinavian women, but I wouldn't have found them in Boston where I was growing up. So I had to go to one of those countries for a couple of months maybe and bring someone home. I thought, man, what a great adventure that would be. That would be incredible. And so a dozen years later, I had my I had my business going, and I was based in Beverly Hills, and I was thinking, okay, what's next? I know I got to make a film based on that fantasy. And so I hired the screenwriter who wrote the script for the Pink Panther, won an Oscar for it. We did a story treatment together, and then I thought, okay, the next thing I got to do is I've got to go to one of those countries with my video camera and videotape the place and the people and interview some models or some actresses. Somehow I've got to stitch something together. And so about a month before I was set to go, I saw this picture in a magazine, and it said, oh my God, if I was going on this fantasy for real, this is the woman I would bring home. And so my why not was I reached out to the magazine and we got in touch, and I arranged to interview her, and she's my wife.
Wow. That you know what? That is such a great story. Stu, how long have you been married?
30, how many years now? I don't know, about 30. I've got to think about it, but what is it? 32 years.
I don't know that I've heard such a great story, because you literally saw her in a magazine, said, that's the woman I want to meet. You got in touch with the magazine, figured out a way to get over to, what country was it?
It was Denmark, Copenhagen.
You went to Copenhagen,
yeah.
Interviewed her, got to meet her. And I know you've got family, 30 years of marriage. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I mean, I wake up with her every morning and I go, wow, you're here. Oh my God. That's fantastic.
Do you have the magazine still? I'm sure you do.
No, I don't have I have the picture, but I don't have the magazine anymore. She's a Penthouse cover model. I was trying to be discreet, but
wow.
All of that's supposed to be impossible, right?
Man, why
not do something that's impossible?
You know what, Stu, I'm going to end on that note. What do you say we end the show on that note?
Why not?
Stu, this has been amazing. I am so glad you came on. I'm so glad you came into my network. I'm so excited to share your talents, your genius. Everything that you do is so good. You bring such value. So we're glad to have you on Why Not Wednesday. We're proud to have you as part of Why Institute. And I'm looking forward to continued collaboration with you. Have a great rest of the week, everyone. We will see you next week on Why Not Wednesday. Thank you, Stu.
Thank you so much.